Welcome to Newsday Studios. I'm Joye Browne, and we are here for a one-on-one conversation with Rob Lubin, the Democratic candidate in the 2nd Congressional District. We wanted to have a debate between Mr. Lubin and incumbent Republican Congressman Andrew Garbarino, but Garbarino turned down our invitation, even though we offered several dates for the debate. Right now, we'd like to welcome you, Mr. Lubin.
Good to be here. Thank you, Joy, and I wish we could debate.
Just a little background before we get started. You'll be 30 years old on Election Day. You live in Lindenhurst. You're a small business owner, and you've never run for Congress before. With that, let's get right to it. We hit the streets to hear from Long Islanders in the 2nd District. One issue came up over and over again.
How are we going to be able to lower the tax and how we can buy houses for us, younger generation?
What can the federal government do to make housing more affordable here on Long Island?
Look, let's face it. We have a housing crisis, and it's important. As someone who also struggles with cost of living and wants to buy a home with my fiance, I recognize this problem. But we need to be hands-on about it. We've got to work locally to cut down the bureaucracy and the zoning and the permitting process. But from a federal perspective, let's give first-time homeowners a shot. Let's give them a financial opportunity, $25,000 to go out there and buy a home and pursue that aspect of the American dream. It is important, it is imperative that we help people buy homes. We are losing people here on Long Island. They are leaving. We got to up the supply, but we got to do it working with the communities. And it is possible. It really is.
Well, let's keep going. The concerns about affordability aren't just limited to housing.
It's painful to go to the grocery store. I'm serious.
Yes.
My pockets are hurting. I don't make a bad salary, but with everything that's going on, you're struggling. Everyone is struggling.
She's struggling. A lot of people are struggling. You're in Congress. What are you going to do?
Chandra's right. I mean, look at where we are right now. We're in a position where I was at the grocery store the other day. Checking out, I gasped when I saw the price. Same thing when you fill up your car with gas. We gotta repeal the salt cap.
We're going to get there.
We're going to get there?
Let's go to affordability in terms of housing and other, in terms of housing and groceries. That's what people are talking to us right now.
Look, our current representative has a massive amount of finances coming from corporations. The same corporations that are raising the prices on our goods. And if we don't hold those corporations accountable, those prices will continue to skyrocket. It is important that we be involved. Look, I'm a capitalist. I recognize the market. I understand it. I come from the private sector. But it is important to understand that we are being taken advantage of, especially when it comes to groceries. And we have a representative right now that is 70% funded by the corporations that are doing that damage to us.
No, but what are you going to do about it?
Well, I'm going to go there and I'm going to hold corporations accountable. I'll be loud about it. I'll make sure that they are being fair. We're getting taxed because of the supply chain issues. That's what happened during COVID. We incurred extra costs due to the supply chain issue. They kept those costs. So we have to be involved from a federal perspective in making sure that these corporations are being fair about pricing.
Let's move on. Another big issue that plays into affordability, we're there for SALT, the ability for homeowners to write off their state and local taxes. Edward from Blue Point wrote, SALT is costing Long Islanders millions of dollars. Do you believe the Republican majority in Congress will ever raise the SALT cap above $10,000? So what's your response to him, but also what is it that you would do should you be elected to office?
Look, let's talk about SALT. How did we lose it in the first place? Donald Trump made a decision to enforce this, affecting states like New York, New Jersey, California the most. It's important to understand that under Republican leadership, the same Republican leadership that tells us they're going to make our lives easier, they are actively making our lives more difficult. We need to repeal the salt cap. I get it. It is expensive to live on Long Island. I hear it from my neighbors. I see it when I go to the store. It is important right now that we have people that are willing to work in a bipartisan manner to get things done. This Congress passed the least amount of legislation ever. They're not getting stuff done. We need people in there that can bring in a new vision, and I can bring in that new vision to negotiate and make sure that I won't sign anything unless SALT is involved, because my neighbors need it. I need it.
So your delegation, should you be elected, could be mixed, Republican, Democrat. You're saying that the Republicans didn't do it, and you're saying this is all the fault of Republicans. How are you going to be working with your Republican colleagues then?
No problem for me, honestly. I'll work with a Republican, I'll work with a Democrat, I'll work with an independent. I choose people over party, and that is how I have run my campaign from the beginning. I don't come from the political space. I come from the private sector. I come from a small business background. And when you're running a small business, you got to work with everyone to make sure your business is successful. I'm going to take that same attitude straight to Congress. And I think our current representative, who led the fight to bring SALT back and failed. He wasn't able to do it. That is indicative that we need a change.
Let's move on to immigration. Now, that has become one of the biggest national election issues. The GOP has been calling for a crackdown at the border to halt illegal crossings into the country. But at the same time, we know that the largest growing populations here on Long Island are immigrants, particularly Asians and Latinos who came into the country legally or otherwise. On the campaign trail, what are you hearing from immigrants or recent immigrants?
I think there's fear. I think in general, there's fear. We have a problem at the border, and it needs to be solved. And we had a bipartisan border bill that was shot down and torpedoed by one person, Donald Trump. And the issue we have here is we play politics with key issues around elections. And the truth is, if we're going to get anything done with the immigration issue, we've got to pass this bipartisan bill. It gets more federal agents. It gets more judges to expedite the asylum-seeking process, and it gets people into opportunities because there are jobs out there that we need people for, that our small businesses need, that our agriculture needs. We can do it, but it's got to be done legally, and we can't be wasting our time with sham impeachments like my opponent of Mayorkas. That's a waste of our time. And the American people are smart. They don't want their time wasted. When they elect people, they want to see things get done.
Well, let's stay on immigration for a minute and piggyback on that last question. What's your stance on Donald Trump's idea of mass deportations, especially as it relates to Long Island, your district?
Joy, of course we have a problem with the border and we need a solution. The solution is not mass deportation. I mean, that is draconian. And by the way, from an economic perspective, that is not as effective as Donald Trump thinks it'll be. We have to be smart and pragmatic about this. We have to lead with solutions that are actually possible. That's an impossible solution. The chaos that would ensue after that would just take us backwards. Let's pass the border bill. Let's have an asylum-seeking process that's not broken. The only way we're going to be able to do that is if we have some common sense in Congress. People like my representative and the other representatives on Long Island, minus obviously Congressman Suozzi, who's been very vocal about the border, are wasting our time. And this time is precious. If you want to fix the border, you got to work together.
Let's go to foreign affairs now.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about the Israel-Hamas war. The conflict has been expanding with Iran firing missiles into Israel. That was in retaliation for Israeli strikes against Hezbollah leaders. Tens of thousands have been killed in the fighting. What's your stance on the war, and how would you approach ending the violence should you make it to Congress?
Joy, it's a very sad situation. I stand with Israel. Israel has been an important ally to the United States, not only militaristically, but also from an innovation standpoint and from a democratic standpoint in a region where we need allies. Israel has been our friend, and they need us right now. My fiance is Israeli, so I hear about it a lot at home. The truth is, we need to get to a resolution, and we need to get there quickly. We can't be focused on the wrong things. Hamas needs to lay down their arms, return the hostages. These are important steps so that a true government can stand and represent the Palestinian people correctly. Because like everybody else, seeing people in peril is distraught. It makes me sick and it's sad. And I want to be able to be a part of a solution that gets that done quickly.
Well, staying with foreign affairs, fighting between Ukraine and Russia has now been going on for 2 years. Its allies sending weapons to Ukraine along with the U.S. What position do you have on further U.S. assistance?
This surprises me that the Republicans have been so adamant about not helping an ally in need. Putin, the autocrat, won't stop at Ukraine. He will go all the way to NATO, and then what happens? Boots on the ground, because that's the deal that we have. So the truth is, we have to send Ukraine arms. We have to support them in their war for sovereignty. It's a senseless war that Putin has decided to claim. It's important that Ukraine knows we have their back, and it's working. If we can continue to help them, and if they can continue to fight, for their homeland, they will get it done.
Let's come back home for a minute. Long Island and New York State overall traditionally has been viewed as purple, meaning that it swings between conservative Republicans, who've been on a roll lately, and liberal Democrats. How would you define yourself in a climate where it seems to have to be one or the other?
Joy, I'm not into labels. I'm into getting stuff done. I work happily with Republicans as I do with Democrats. My focus is common sense. My focus is getting stuff done. The only way that we can push our country forward is if we have people that are less focused on labels, like my opponent is, and more focused on actually providing for the constituents of New York's 2nd District who are struggling with affordability, healthcare accessibility, clean drinking water, small businesses. I don't have time for the labels. All I have time for is solutions.
Now, let's talk about the presidential election. Your opponent, Congressman Andrew Garbarino, was the only member of Long Island's House delegation to certify the results in the last presidential race. If elected, will you do the same no matter which candidate wins?
Joy, the fact that we have to talk about certifying elections, and we saw the other evening on the debate between Vance and Governor Walz, yes, of course I would, because I believe in our democracy. I stand for our democracy, and I'm fighting for our democracy. And I think our democracy is on the line here. And people like Andrew Garbarino, he did the right thing there, but his party doesn't. And if he's just going to fall in line with the party, we don't know what to expect. I'm sick of the chaos. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of all the conversations about if our elections are rigged or not. We have an incredible country, the greatest country on earth. Of course I'll accept the results.
All right. Many of our readers and viewers are also, and no surprise here, asking about the issue of abortion. Following the Supreme Court ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade, what's your stance?
I just don't understand why we are continuing to encroach on women's rights. I think it's unfair, and I think it is ridiculous. I will codify right away. I stand with women. I stand with making historic investments in women's health. I will be a champion for women's rights, unlike my opponent, who got an F from Planned Parenthood, who's voted against women's rights multiple times. Look, the reality is, my goal is to make people's lives easier. It appears his goal is to take things away from people. I won't let that happen. I will stand with the women of the 2nd District, and they have a friend in me.
All right, let me go back to clarify. You said codify. Codify what?
Codify Roe v. Wade.
Codify Roe v. Wade?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's stay on abortion, which was decided by the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the court for a minute. Supreme Court's ruling, after the Supreme Court's ruling on abortion rights, that is, President Biden floated the idea of expanding the number of justices on the High Court. He wants to impose term limits, and he also suggested setting up a code of conduct. What do you think about these ideas?
Look, I think we have things in place for a reason, and it shows why voting is so important. If you didn't vote for Donald Trump and he didn't win the presidency, we wouldn't have these judges. We can't reconfigure things just because we're unhappy. I haven't really given much thought into changing up the Supreme Court. What I have given a lot of thought to is voting. If people vote, their result and their friends vote and their families vote, and they get the result they want, then they don't have to worry about this problem.
So just again to clarify, the Supreme Court is, you leave it the way it is.
As of right now, yes.
All right. The next question is especially important given what's happening in Florida. This past summer, right here, President Biden announced an emergency declaration for Suffolk County after nearly 9 inches of rain fell on parts of the island in just 24 hours. County Executive Ed Romaine suggested climate change was responsible for the storm and the damage. Some roadways on the North Shore of Long Island were washed out. What do you think the federal government can or should do to address that problem?
Joy, I went out after those storms. I drove to go see the damage myself, and I posted about it on social media. I'm scared. I think we have a real problem on our hands, and you're seeing it, like you mentioned, in Florida with Hurricane Milton. We need funding to upgrade our infrastructure immediately. Our scientists and fire departments have been flagging fear that our beaches are eroding, that we are having problems, and this will keep happening. You don't snap your finger and all of a sudden this stops happening. You have to have action. My opponent's party has gone against everything possible when it comes to protecting our environment. We need someone who is willing to accept that our environment is changing. We need to upgrade our infrastructure, and we need to take care of our streets and homes. People are and will continue to be in danger if we don't do something.
But what does that look like on Long Island? What would you from Washington do for the South Shore?
It's all about emergency relief funding and making sure that's in place and well funded. It's about sanding our beaches, but that's a Band-Aid, right? I mean, that doesn't last forever. So we need to come up with legitimate infrastructural systems that take care of our streets, that take care of our, when the water is rushing, that it makes sure that we have a sewage system that is adequate, that can handle it. It's a high stakes situation, but it needs to be done quickly.
Well, we're seeing a lot of these storms. We're seeing a lot of damage that we've never seen before. Do you think that things that are destroyed should be rebuilt, or do you think it should just go back to nature?
We'll have to see the example, Joy. I mean, I can't speak on to, depending on what you're referring to. Obviously, if it's something that's been abandoned for years and it got destroyed, that could be.
No, I'm talking about someone's home. It's there, and then it's not there in an area where we've seen storms before, and you have to make a decision. Do you want to put your money behind restoration, or do you want to say, hey, this isn't going to work anymore, we got to move?
Sure. Listen, if I win, my job is to protect the constituents of New York's 2nd District. I do that by making sure they are all right. If they need our help, and if they need those homes, we are going to fight for those homes. That is my job. We're going to fight to make sure they have access to flood insurance. That is my job. Of course, this will keep happening, and we should be honest and say, hey, this is a problem that will continue to happen. But I won't let someone suffer in my district if I'm in charge. I will make sure they know that Rob Lubin is there and I'm out there. Our current representative is nowhere to be seen. No town halls, no debates, no social media, nothing. I will be out there, I will have town halls, and I will listen to people's concerns, especially when it comes to their homes and the environment.
Well, let me ask you, your district is it splits between Nassau and Suffolk.
Sure.
And I know that you've been out in Suffolk a lot. What's your reception in Nassau? That area is pretty red, and they have done, and they've had some powerhouses representing them, like Peter King.
Absolutely. I love Massapequa. I'm fluent in Italian. My mother's from Italy. She moved here in her 20s. There's a huge Italian community there that I get along great with. I want them to know that I'm there to fight for them. And Congressman Suozzi, during his election, fought for them as well, and I will do the same thing. We split the unions. I have good union relationships, and I will continue to push. Every inch of this district will be protected under my administration. No ifs, ands, or buts. Just because Massapequa's voted Republican doesn't mean that I won't fight for them. And I will introduce myself and show them there's more common ground that unites us than anything else.
Many people we spoke with had questions about the state of Long Island's roads.
Why are our taxes so high and nothing? Our streets are terrible. Our highways are terrible.
You can't get around Long Island without a car. You can't. So what can you do? What can the federal government do to help?
This is a perfect opportunity for the federal government to leverage the funds that are dedicated towards Long Island that we got in BIF to make sure that we are repatching and fixing our roads. It is essential that we fight for that funding. I have hit some pretty bad potholes this past week in Lindenhurst, where I live. They frustrate the heck out of me. I know my neighbors feel the same way. It's almost like you got to drive on the other side of the road. These problems are fixable, but it takes a representative that's willing to roll up their sleeves and get the money to fix them. I'm willing to do that. I am ready to do that. And at the same time, I think it's very important that we continue to invest in our public transportation, right? So people can have an option of public transportation if their car hits a pothole and they can't use it tomorrow. Like, we need to be making these kinds of investments in our district. We want to attract people here. But more importantly, we want to keep people here.
All right, before we move on, you better tell people what BIF is.
Yes, the Infrastructure Act. I apologize.
No, don't apologize.
Sorry about that.
We just want to clarify, and
Yes,
don't be sorry. It's all good.
You know, there was money dedicated towards Long Island in that, especially for our public transportation and our infrastructure. So, yes.
All right, let's go on. Former President Trump was targeted in 2 assassination plots this year. One was in Pennsylvania, where he was rushed off stage at a campaign event. The other happened at a golf course in Florida. In both cases, an assault rifle was recovered. Do you think these weapons should remain readily available to the public?
For starters, there should never be a situation where a candidate, especially a presidential candidate, is being shot at in an attempted assassination. I am furious about that, and that is not the country we want to be building. When it comes to the guns, the reality is we do have to make changes. I am pro the Second Amendment. I support the Second Amendment. I stand with the Second Amendment. I will never touch or talk about touching the Second Amendment. But what I do think is important is that we be pragmatic about guns. We got to get guns out of the hands of the wrong people. We got to support our law enforcement in their efforts to do that. And I think universal background checks make sense. You know, my opponent has a very bad record on guns. He's voted against red flag laws plenty of times. I sit here in support of the Second Amendment, but in support of change that is common sense oriented. Our kids are getting shot in their schools, right? I mean, that's horrific. And our representative is silent when that happens. We can't be silent. We have to be smart about getting the guns out of the hands of the wrong people and supporting our law enforcement while we do that.
Well, another thing that's become kind of a campaign issue, especially coming from Democrats nationally, is about Project 2025 and questions about it. One, have you read Project 2025?
Some of it. I haven't read the whole thing. It's nasty enough. You don't need that much reading to figure out how bad it is.
Was there anything in there in particular that bothered you?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, the whole thing. But let's talk about the backwards motions we'll be making with women's rights, the cuts to Social Security that people and Medicaid that people have worked so hard for, the attack on the FBI and the cutting the funding for our FBI who works so hard. Project 2025, Trump's 2025 project plan, is a playbook on what the Republicans will do if he is elected in office. And what scares me is the fact that if they are to win, we can find ourselves in a situation where our rights are being stripped away quickly, and not to mention all the firing of hardworking civil servants. I don't stand for that.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of concern about voter fraud and the fairness of the election. Do you foresee any problems in accurately counting the votes here on Long Island?
I do not. I do not foresee any problems. I know voter fraud is a topic of conversation, especially from one group of people, but I do not foresee it being a problem here on Long Island. I know that people work extremely hard to make sure our votes are counted correctly. I will stand by the results of the election. I hope my opponent will do the same.
Thank you, Mr. Lubin, for joining this discussion. And I want to thank you at home for joining us. Newsday reporters are taking a broader look at this conversation. To read their story, just go to Newsday.com. I'm Joye Browne.